Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. This instructional video is for anyone who's purchased a Cranky Poodle pad pattern, that's a tongue twister, or for anyone who's purchased one of my DIY kits. We're going to make a basic no frills liner in this video, but the same instructions apply to all my patterns. So this is what we'll end up with. So if you've purchased the pattern alone, you would have already chosen your topper, your backer and your core, and you would have read in the instructions that you need to hot wash and dry your fabric and iron before you start. If you've purchased a kit, then I've already done that for you. So in the kit you'll receive your topper, and it's already marked with your sew line and your core line and your turn-in point and your backer. The kits have a variety of different fabrics so that you can choose what works best for you without going and spending a fortune on different fabrics. There's different cores in each kit for the size of the pad. I'm using 2 flannelette layers today, and I've included a set of snaps in case you've got pliers, and also some Velcro just in case you don't have snap pliers. So we'll get all those out of the way. And we'll start by zigzagging our core together. Turn the machine on and we'll switch to zigzag. I'll do this as quick as possible. I know there's nothing more boring than a really long instructional video. So we'll start by zigzagging along the core line, along the sew line, and we'll double back so we've got a nice sturdy stitch. I'm sewing through the tripod legs, so you'll have to forgive me if I'm going a little bit off the line. And remember to double back at the end. Okay, now we'll just trim up the thread. This won't be seen, so it's not overly important to make sure it's perfect, but you know, take your time at home. I'm trying to rush to do a video. So now we'll get close to our sew line without clipping it, and we'll trim off the excess fabric. In my kits, I leave quite a generous seam allowance. I like to leave some room for error. But if you're using quite expensive core fabric at home, you might want to try conserve your fabric a little bit better. Just trim all of that up. Oops. Straight. Okay, so we've trimmed that. We'll set that aside for now, and we'll get our topper. And I've marked the core line just so it's easier to center the core. Your sew line that we're about to do will be visible on the top of the pad, and that's why I've marked the core line, just so we can make sure it's nice and centered. You can pin that to keep it in place. Then I'm going to switch to a straight stitch. Tongue-tied. Oh my gosh, even my tongue-tied is tongue-tied. We'll use a straight stitch for the top, but you can use a decorative stitch if you like, that's fine. And we'll just sew over our zigzag or on the core line. I'll just take out that pin, try not to run over any pins. If you leave the needle in the fabric like that and then turn, you end up with a nice sharp corner. Once again, at home, take your time and make sure this is nice and straight. One more. forget to double back so that it's nice and sturdy. And then we'll just trim off the excess cotton. Keeping that nice and tidy as we go. Now we'll place our topper and our backer together with the good sides together. So on a plain backer it's a little bit hard to see, but the good side that you want visible together with the good side of the topper. Pin that if you like. Little tip with the pins, I only use 4 pins or less depending on what size pattern I'm working on. That way in my pin cushion there's only ever a few pins to keep track of, and if ever there's one missing I've left it in a pad and I had better go get it out. Now we'll just sew along the sew line in a straight stitch, making sure we leave the turn-in point open, and we'll reverse back so that we've got a nice strong stitch. It's really hard to see through the tripod, but bear with me. Take your time at home, make sure you get this nice and straight. And make sure we don't sew closed our turn-in point. So now we just need to trim off the excess, the seam allowance. Make sure you leave some around the turn-in point. I'm using the pinking shears, they just give quite a good result. If you don't have these, normal fabric scissors are fine. And we want to get close to your sew line without actually trimming it. And take your time at home. All these little extra steps, they can really make quite a difference to your finished product. So really take your time and make sure you do this part well. And remember, we'd like to leave some. If I had to measure, I would say 1 centimetre around the turn-in point. Okay, just take my pins out, don't need those anymore. And then we'll snip off any sharp points. Snip all of those off. And then we'll snip a little V into any corners or bends. I know some people snip more than 1 V, that's fine if that works for you. And I know other people snip alternate Vs, meaning on the topper they snip a V and then just next to that, but not directly on top of it, on the backer they snip another V. Apparently it just gives a better finished product. All right. Okay, now we turn the pad in or out. Everyone seems to say something slightly different. Once again, take your time at home. I'm using a little bit of brute force here because I'd like to keep this video short and sweet. If you don't have a point turner, you could use a capped pen or a knitting needle or something like that. Not your scissors, please. That will probably poke a hole in your fabric, but you see it all the time. And if you pay particular attention to the corners, that will just make a really a difference to your finished product. One more corner for me, and then we'll either pin or just hold the turn-in point area, the fabric, together. So we'll just hold that together. So that's our turn-in point there. So you can pin it if you like. I'm just going to hold it and iron it. Give the whole pad a quick iron. It will make quite a difference when you're top stitching. You can pin that if you like. Now, an extra little thing I do, because I like to use the same shape pattern and just add different cores myself, is to add in a little bit of ribbon so that I know this is just a liner. So I use 3 different coloured ribbons, a light pink one for light use, regular and heavy use. You don't have to do that, but it just helps me. Another thing you could do is use different colour snaps for the use, or even some people sew or embroider a little mark on the wing. So 1 mark for light, 2 for regular, 3 for super. Okay, so we'll do our top stitching. I'm going to put my machine to slow. At home, really take your time. If you've got a blind edge foot, I would use that. If not, just line up a point on your foot with the edge of the pad so that you can keep it a nice straight line. I just noticed I really missed a point in that corner. I'll just put that back. You could also put in any care instructions if you've had some labels printed, or if you're selling your pads, you could put in a your shop name. So we'll go nice and slow in a straight stitch, remembering to double back. I've got a small problem with the computer on my sewing machine, not quite stopping. I've lined up the edge of the pad with a particular part of my foot there rather than switching feet. Now I'm trying to go quick so that I don't take up too much of your time, but really take your time at home. Too fun. Nearly done. Stitch. And just remember to double back when we finish. That way your stitch doesn't come undone. And we're almost done. We just need to fix either your snaps or your Velcro. I've put a fairly large amount of Velcro in the kit. You might want to chop it down if you like. So almost done. I'm going to use snaps. So we just fold the wings back. You don't want them too tight or too loose. Just make sure your pad is all in a straight line like that. And you can measure it if you like. It's probably best if you're using the Velcro. After a while with the snaps, you just get used to what goes where. So we poke a hole in the middle where the snaps go. If you poke a hole in the wrong spot, it doesn't matter. The material will go back together when you wash it. With your snaps, we put the part that's a bit like a tack through like so. We get one of the die, I think they're technically called, and just make sure that the flat part of the snap goes on the flat part of the pliers, and push down nice and tight. Then with the other side, the little trick, if you've got the flat part up on this side, make sure it's the flat part up on the opposite side. And that's how you can make sure that they always do up. That one on. Make sure that the flat part of the pliers is on the flat part of the die. Press, and we're done. Congratulations, you've made your pad. Thanks for tuning in.